When I was growing up, I'm from Detroit. How many people you know people from Detroit? All right. All right, so when I grew up, I was from Detroit. I lived on the hard side of Detroit. By the time I was 9, my father died of an overdose of drugs, and I had 2 uncles that were murdered in Detroit. I grew up back in the 70s and 80s in Detroit, and back then you wasn't making it out of there without a gun or jail. It came to a point where I decided when I was young that, look, all my friends who roll, they got these cars, they got these shoes, and then there's people telling me, oh, education's the way to go. But you don't see anybody with education. There's nobody in my neighborhood that graduated from college. There's nobody in my neighborhood that looked like they could, have some money. These guys, they balling though. They have change, they have women, they have cars, and that's what you can identify with. But you know what? You have to make a decision at some point in your life to trust something you cannot see. I couldn't see the inside of education, but I trusted it. In any case, I went on to high school, went to school at Michigan. Anybody familiar with University of Michigan? You might have heard Chris Webber talk. I went to high school with him and went to college with him. And that's kind of how we met with Liz as well. I went on to law school. I was the first in my family to go to college. I was the first in my family to go to law school. I graduated from law school, worked at a big law firm, started making $100,000. Now, you talk about a kid from Detroit making $100,000, you think that going out and buying the change, I'm buying the shoes, I'm buying everything I want. That's actually the opposite. Once you go through the system, you'll realize that once you get that money, that stuff is not important. What's important in life is things like time and family and other things that you always read about and see about on TV, but when you're out there hustling at your age, you can't keep those things in perspective. But education does that for you. Well, anyway, after I was at the law firm, I came down here to Atlanta. I became president of a venture capital firm. Anybody know what venture capital is? If you ever seen Flip This House, where people go in, they buy a house for a little bit of money, they build it up and they sell it for more money, venture capitalists do that with business. They go in, they buy a business that they like, they build it up by putting people and equipment in, and then they sell it for more money. So I was first the attorney for that company, and I became the president. There I took a Korean company public here in the US, and it raised $22 million. And I became corporate counsel for that company. Now I have my own practice. I'm down in Atlantic Station. I have a bunch of clients. I only work with business owners. I only work with business owners. I don't do any bad news stuff. No divorce, criminal, DUI, bankruptcy, any of that. I don't do it. I work exclusively with business owners on contracts. I go to closings. I'm the good news attorneys. I help them with starting their business, growing their business, buying and selling another business, raising money for their business, finding investors, etc. Everybody clear on that? So I don't know any criminal procedure. I don't know where the courthouse is. What thing you will need to know about law is that there's a whole different area of law. Some of you may be aware of, some of you won't. So in terms of today, I want to make today helpful for you. You know a little bit about my story. I got a lot I can talk about, but we can talk about college. We can talk about law school. We can talk about what it's like to be an attorney. We can talk about what it's like to be a business attorney, and we can talk about what it's like to start a business. But whatever you ask me, I'm going to give you the honest to God truth, because I sat in your seat. I know where you are, but you're not sure about your life. When that graduation day comes, it is the happiest and it's the worst day of your life. Because after that graduation cap comes on, people no longer hold you to the standard of a child. They expect you to produce in society. And you have to start to make decisions about how are you going to get money into your bank account. Because right now, all you getting money in your bank account because of other people, other things around you. But once you graduate, it'll be up to you to find a way to get money into your bank account. And if you don't have a strategy, then you're going to start to do shortcuts. And shortcuts will end up in jail or dead. I'm telling you that now. So figure out this time while you don't have any pressure to put money into your bank account, what's going to be your strategy to get people to give you money? Me, my strategy is my brain. They pay me $250 an hour to say, Dave, I want you to tell me what's wrong with my business. Tell me how to get it started. Tell me what I need to do to make it bigger. And they pay me to give them that advice. I'm giving you that advice today for free. So this is a chance if you ever want to start a business, if you ever wanted to be an attorney, if you ever want to understand what law school's like, if you understand what college is like, this is a chance to do it. So I'm just going to do a quick survey about what the topic is that we can concentrate on today. How many people want to hear about college? All right, there's 4, 5, 6. How many want to care about law school? Let's say about law school. What about being a business attorney or lawyer? Okay, and then what about owning a business? All right, clearly owning a business is going to win it. All right, so you guys all just came into my office, right? You saw me on the website, you heard about me, you said I have a business idea. I need to talk to an attorney. You come into my office in the Atlantic Station, you sit down. The first thing I ask you is, what is the product or service that you're selling? Too many people try to form their business by doing other things. Get up a website, form an LLC or corporation, but they haven't figured out what is the product or service that's going to sell. Now, what does that mean? You have a bank account. You have to get money into the bank account. I sell a service. I tell people, if you come to me with your business, I can help you grow it. If you pay me money, I'll give that to you. That's a service. So when you sell something in the business, you got to figure out, are you selling a service, meaning something with your mind or your physical hands, lawnmower, dress designer. Those are service jobs. A product is a product. I'm selling chairs, I'm selling shoes, I'm selling hats. Those are products. So you got to figure out which one you're going to sell first. Now, everybody wants to be in business, legal or illegal, okay? Now, let me tell you this. The principles of business apply the same, but the risk associated with illegal businesses are ridiculous. I can invite the sheriff to my house for dinner, right? I can make the same amount of money as a drug dealer, but why would I do that if I can do the same amount of energy and effort and make it legal, right? So in terms of starting a business, the first thing you have to ask yourself is, what is the service or product that I'm selling? Anybody have an idea of business that they wanted to start and they said, you know what, I've thought about this. We'll use you as the example today. Somebody's going to get a free legal advice on their business today. All right, what is it? All right. He's going to make athletic highlight tapes. Okay, so that's his business. You have a name for your business? All right, K2 Productions. K2 Production is a service. They're making highlight tapes. Who's your target audience? Athletes? All right, okay, so his target audience is athletes. He wants to go out and convince an athlete, hey, let me make a highlight tape for you. You're gonna pay me, and I'm gonna deliver you the highlight tape for you to sell to colleges and recruiting bases, et cetera, right? So K2 Productions coming to my office. The first thing we have to do is we have to set him up in a separate business other than himself. Because what's your name? Keno right now is the only person in this business. And right now, he is this business. Which means that something goes wrong with this business, that's his problem. So what we have to do is take his business away from him and put it into a separate structure. And that's called an LLC or corporation. How many people of you heard of LLC or corporation? All right, an LLC or corporation are these vehicles that they've designed for you to take your business concept and put them in so that they protect you from the business. So Keno would set up, let's say, an LLC. It's called a limited liability company, right? It's designed by the state. America is the biggest entrepreneurial place on the planet. The other countries don't have this much desire for the American dream and start your own business as they do in this country. And one of the ways we do that is we give people the tools that it takes to start a business. Excuse me, sir. You had a question? Okay. Just wait for a minute, all right? Anyway, so we take his business, we take Keno's business, and we put it into a limited liability company, okay? So we'll come in, and he'll say, okay, Keno, the first thing you need is to take the business off your shoulders and put it into a vehicle that can operate by itself. Now, this LLC is actually like a person. It's the government treats it like a person. It has its own social security number. You get what's called a tax ID number. It can own real estate. It can own property. It can do almost anything you can do as a person. This entity can. So we take K2 Productions and we put it inside of this company, and now it's called K2 Productions LLC. Okay? And K2 Production LLC now has a tax ID number. The next thing it can do is open up a bank account. So Keno goes to a bank, says, hey, I have K2 Productions LLC. Here's my EIN number or tax ID number, and I can open up a bank account. So now K2 Productions LLC has a bank account that people can write checks to. Now that's important because now whatever happens with K2 Productions is limited to that bank account and that entity. He no longer has to worry about it himself personally because he set up a separate company. But just like a parent and a baby that's been created, he's the parent of it. So he's the owner, he's the manager. In the corporations, he's the shareholder. So he is the owner of this separate entity that now holds all of the services that's going to be offered. So now when he goes out and he sells his services out to people, he sells it not as Keno, but he sells it as K2 Productions LLC, and they write the check out to that account. Okay? Now, K2 Productions LLC also has to now pay other people to help him produce his videos. So when he goes out and he gets his business cards and he puts K2 Productions on and people write him a check, he has to make a decision. If somebody writes me a check for $1,000, what's the best way for me to use this money? okay? And what I do is I say, you're gonna have video people, right? You're gonna take on film. I help the company do contracts so that when he spends the money out of that entity and the money comes back in, those contracts are correct such that the company can continue to operate. So, for example, he hires the videographer that's gonna go out and shoot the athlete who just paid him $1,000. Well, that videographer has to sign over all of the things that he's creating so that the company can own it. Do you get what I'm saying? Because in law, whoever creates it owns it. He created the LLC, he owns it. The videographer created it, he owns it. So the contract pulls it away from the person who created it and puts it into the company. So now, Grady Productions LLC has a bank account. It has the video brought in by the videographer. It has the money that's brought in by the athlete. And now it operates by itself. Now, why is this important? As his business grows, and the Grady Productions gets bigger and bigger and bigger and starts to hire people. He doesn't hire the people, the company hires the people, and it gets bigger and bigger. When it's time to sell, let's say CBS comes along, let's say Rivals comes along, and they go, hey, that Grady Productions is actually getting a lot of traction. They go to buy his company. If he was doing all this himself, they're not gonna buy it. Because if you don't buy him, you can't buy the business. But if the business has been operating by itself, they can say, hey man, how about we give you $1 million check and let us take this business from you? And they can walk away with it clean and free and not have to worry about him because he's already set up a separate entity to hold it. Do you get what I'm saying? The importance of creating a separate business than having it be just in your individual name. Creating an LLC or a corporation to put all of your business assets in so that when it grows and you're able to sell it or go public or do something with it later, pass it to your kids, it can operate by itself. That's the primary functions. What I do as an attorney is to help people understand that dynamic between how do I take it from what's in my head to getting people to cut me a check, to making money off of it, to actually Grady Productions can pay him a check. He actually will be an employee or get a check from his own company. And that's what I help people walk that process through. It's not easy. Obviously, they pay me a lot of money to do it, but the process is easier so that now he can just focus in on getting athletes because he's like, Dave got the rest of that. You know, Dave, how do I hire an employee? I got that. Dave, I got this in the mail from the Department of Labor. What about employment tax? What about hiring people? All that stuff I take care of in order so that he can just focus in on what? Going out, selling his company to athletes so he can get them to write them a check. That's what I do. I take all the pressure off of other business owners so that they can do what they're supposed to do to generate money. Does that make sense? Any questions real quick? Well, let's talk about the two things differently. When you buy a business, there's different ways that you can negotiate the sale of the business. He, for example, can sell the business, but then say, hey, the business has to keep me on as an employee. That's kind of similar to a royalty in which he would still get money. They can also give him a royalty of what the business earns later. Most of the time when people buy businesses, they take it all and they just give him money. Now, he has the right, most of the time, to go out and start another business that doesn't compete with this. So they'll ask for what's called a non-compete. They'll say, we're taking this business, but we know you're good at this, and we know you started this already, so we want you not to start a business like this for 2 years. And you go and you take your $2 million and you do whatever you want. You open up a sailing class or go to the Bahamas or whatever, but we're taking this business. And sometimes if he's important, they'll say, we want to keep you on as president. We'll pay you a salary of $100,000, and this, but we'll own it because we have it and we want to do some other things with it. Now, when it comes to music, music is a whole different, each business has its own different models to it. So when it comes to music, just like when I said a videographer creates something, they own it, same thing in music. Anytime you draw something, let's suppose somebody just doodled something here on the desk and then left it. And I came over and was like, wow, this looks like a nice logo that I could use for my law firm. And I took it and I put it out on the billboard without asking them. The law says that that person owns that image even if they never filed a copyright, if they never filed anything, so that if I took their image and put it up, I would have to pay them. So same thing in music. As soon as you write those lyrics, they're yours, even if somebody else performs them. As soon as you create that beat that's original, it's yours. And so what you have with record companies is that contract is really designed to take that right and put it into their company. In exchange, they say, I'm going to take what you created, I'm going to exploit it. I'm going to take your design you just had, I'm going to exploit it, I'm going to put money into it, I'm going to market it and branch it, and when I get money in, I'm going to give you a piece of it. That's what a royalty is. So in music, the contracts are designed to take the property that you created away from you, put it into the company in exchange for a promise to pay a percentage of the profits that is generated later. And so that's why it's so important with these record companies. I got a lot of people who come out to start record companies that not only do they have to make sure they have the contract with the person, because a handshake is not going to cut it. Not only do they have the contract with all their artists to take the property away, they also have to understand how to use that in a way to make money. And they have to also, nowadays, people don't want to give away that right without what's called an advancement. So if you wrote the lyrics and you gave it and I signed you up, you don't necessarily want to give it to me on a promise later. You're like, hey, Dave, can you put $5,000 in my pocket right now? Can you do something like that? So I work with the business owners who have to create a budget and say, all right, it's going to cost me this much to give him an advancement. It's going to cost me this much to put him in the studio. It's going to cost me this much to sell it. And so why artists only get a small percentage of those royalties is because they have to subsidize that with a lot of people. So I think it's like 1 out of every 30 artists you sign will actually generate money. So you're losing money on 29 other artists. And you got to understand that about the music industry. So people say, well, how come I'm only getting this percentage? I'm like, well, because so many other people don't pan out. And as a business owner, it has to make sense for you. So that's what royalties come into play. You had a question? All right, what 50 Cent did with Vitamin Water was this. As the company gets bigger, let's suppose there's KD Productions, okay? As a company gets bigger, it goes on to what's called rounds of financing. Suppose he started this company with $5,000. You know, he just kind of bought some video equipment, hired a couple people, and just kind of got it going. But then he had a contract from ESPN that says, hey, I got the top 50 athletes. I want you to go around and create reels for them. And they say, we're going to pay you $1 million. But ESPN doesn't pay you $1 million up front. They pay you $1 million when it's done. So he's looking like, man, I got to deliver on this $1 million contract, but I don't have the money. So he comes to me and he says, Dave, what can I do to get the money? And I say, well, you'll put together a document in which you will describe your business to wealthy people, and you'll say, this is my business. This is the opportunity. ESPN has offered me $1 million to do these things. I don't have the money to produce the video. It's going to cost me $200,000. Hey, would you like to invest in my business? Own a piece of KD Productions in exchange for putting in $200,000. So I help him put together the documents where I might come along and say, okay, Liz, you know, he wants to raise, $200,000. Can I count you in for $100,000 for, let's say, 10%? And she goes, okay, no problem. So she pays $100,000. She gets 10% of the company, and he starts to build, use that money to build. And then all of a sudden, the ESPN contract comes through, and they make $800,000 on the contract, and then he goes around and gets other contracts. Well, that's called an offering round, when you have a percentage in your company that you sell off pieces for other people to invest. Now, if somebody comes back later, let's just say CBS comes back later and buys this company for $10 million, Liz gets 10% of that, right? Because she bought in early when he needed the money. Same thing will happen with Vitamin Water and 50 Cent. Somebody came to him while they were trying to grow the business and said, hey, would you like to purchase a piece of Vitamin Water, early on? And he goes, oh, yeah, sure. I'll put in $100,000 or $200,000. And then the company gets bigger and bigger, and then Coke bought it. And when Coke bought it, he participated in the sale of the company because he bought in when it was lower. And that's really how people make a lot of money in this country, is by finding an opportunity, either creating it themselves or investing in it. So you don't necessarily have to be the business owner. You just can find a business. It's like, you know what? I like that business. Put $10,000 into it. If you have somebody out there who's hustling, who's doing a good job, and you see potential growth, you can just say, look, I want to have Dave write up a contract. I'm going to invest $10,000 into it. I see you're hustling. I know if you got a little bit extra money, you can grow it. And then if they grow it and eventually sell it or do something with it big, you participate in it. If he kept it and never sold it, she still would get 10% of all of his profits every year for the amount that she bought in for. And that's what I do, is I structure that agreement so that she's comfortable, he's comfortable, the company's protected, and we go forward. You got a question? Sure. What happens with iTunes is that there's a company out there called ASCAP or BMI. Has anybody ever heard of this? All right, ASCAP or BMI is called a publishing company, and they have all of the songs out there that you can go to if you're a record music distributor like a Jukebox or Pandora and all those other people. They pull that music down from there, and they get a license from them to use it. And then every time that song is played on the radio, etc., the artist gets a little royalty that gets collected. They get a royalty check at the end of the month for all their music. Every time you hear an artist's music being played somewhere, the person who wrote the lyrics is getting the money, not the person who's talking. The person who's talking makes their money from the concert. The person who wrote the lyrics gets the money from the play. Does that make sense? Okay. So on iTunes perspective, let's say they go to a record company or whoever produces the record and they make an agreement with iTunes and they say, okay, iTunes says, I'm going to take your music, I'm going to offer it out to the public, and I'm going to pay you a royalty of what people buy. So if you buy iTunes songs for $1, the record company and or the publishing company will probably get somewhere around 10% of that. And then iTunes keeps the rest because they put the money into, that's all their advertising, the iPad, they get all of that. So a lot of that money goes towards the company, but a little bit of it goes towards the artist. So that dollar, probably of that dollar, about 10 cents is going towards the record company. And then of that, the artist is probably getting about 4 cents. So, I mean, it's still a lot of money. Yeah, it does add up.
Isn't it true that someone said every time a song is played on the radio, the artist only gets like a penny?
It depends, but yeah, it's small because what the publishing companies do out there is they go out and they get all of the songs all played over all the internet and all the radio and everywhere you hear music in the background, and you're supposed to subscribe to a ASCAP or BMI service. So if you open up a bar, they come to you and you say, I want to play some music in here, and they'll take a log of all the songs you play, and then they collectively put all that money that you paid to that company and all the radio stations paid to it, and they put it into a big pool. And then based upon how much your song is played, they divide the pool up among people's song is played a lot. 10% of that pool has just been your song played. You get 10% of the money, and they give that money to the publisher. Now, if they don't do their own publishing, if they've hired somebody else to do their publishing and they've given their publishing rights to somebody else, then the publisher takes that money and then gives them a percentage of that. So artists who are savvy are now doing their own record companies or doing their own publishing companies because they want to take more of that percentage and not have to give it off to other people. Yeah, well, it depends on where you are in your contract. Some record contracts, you're early on, you'll basically be bound to do 2 or 3 records with that record company before you really start to make any money. But then after that, you start your own record label, and you're able to go out and sign other artists, etc. Starting a record company is not cheap. I mean, it's really hard to pick talent. So let's suppose you say, I'm going to start a record company. You say, I'm going to get $50,000. I'm going to find 8 artists. I'm going to put $5,000 on each artist. If none of them pan out, you just blew $50,000. And trust me when I say a lot of artists don't pan out. You might listen to it in your basement, or you listen to it somewhere and it sounds great. They have a good look, they have a dance, but just people aren't feeling it. And you spend a lot of money. So record companies, although it's nice to think like, oh, I'm a record company, you're going to probably lose a lot of money unless you have an instant hit. And sometimes most people will tell you their instant hit people were people that they're like, this person's no good. So it's just really, it's like gambling a little bit with a record company. So when people tell me they want to start a record company, I'm like, this is what I told a guy. I had a guy one time, he was working at a trucking company, okay? He was probably about 23, 24, and he said at this trucking company that he was able to design some logistics that his boss was able to use to really help their trucking company run efficiently. But that he'd been working there long enough and that his childhood dream was to own a record company, so he wanted to take his savings and his 401k and start his record company. I told him, don't you do that. Your wife will stab you. Your kids will hate you. I go, what you do is you take your boss, hey, if whatever you're paying me, you could probably pay me 75% of what you're paying me as a contractor instead of an employee, and I could probably do this job with my eyes closed. And then you take that, what you designed for that boss, and you go to other trucking companies out there, and you say, hey, you want your trucking to run more efficient? I'll sell you this trucking software that I created before, and it helps you, and you build your business, okay, to make money. And then when you've made all your money in your business, you take it off and blow it in a record company. Because the silliest thing you can do is to take your expertise and what you're good at and then take it and be just, bothered by it and disgusted by it and then go start something brand new. The plumber trying to start a landscaping business is a terrible idea. The plumber starting a plumbing business is a good idea. So that's another thing to keep in mind too, is that as you leave the walls of this school, you will start to develop what's called intellectual property in a particular field, whether you like it or not, okay? Whether it's working at McDonald's, whether it's working at a car wash, you're learning a skill set in the field. Every time you change fields, you go back to zero in the business world. So don't come into my office talking about a record company if you've never owned a record company, never been in the music. Don't come to me about owning a car wash if you've never worked in a car wash. So it's important that you choose your career a little bit, because as you leave, everything you build your momentum in is where you will have to create your living. When I started off, I didn't want to be an attorney, right? I thought I'd go out, play football, all those other things. But as I started to build my career in being an attorney, even now I want to own, my dream is to own landscaping services. Why? Because I didn't have hair and I like to shave up the edges of the grass and make it pretend like it's my hair or whatever. But that's my long-term, I know it sounds crazy, but that's refreshing to cut the grass and see it's nice and smooth and faded and stuff. So, but the attorney started trying to make a living cutting grass. It's not going to work. So what do I have to do? I'm going to cut the grass. I'm going to sell law services until I retire. And when I retire and I have the money, I can then chase my dream job of opening up a landscaping service. So those are the things that I try to keep these business owners from making the bad mistakes. A lot of those mistakes are the people come in, they get excited about something they've never had any experience in, and it fails. So when you're starting a business, there's a few things you got to know. One is you got to have experience in the business, or two, you got to have somebody who has experience in the business with you. So I can go out and start a lawnmower service if I take my landscaper and we partner together, because he has the experience, I'll bring the money, boom, that works. So you don't have to have the experience, but you better have somebody on your team that has the experience, right? Two is you got to be able to be convinced that somebody's going to pay you money for it. Coming up with ideas and things that are unproven are very hard to break into the market to make money off of, but it can happen. So you got to know that you're going to make money off of it. And three, you just got to have a tremendous amount of faith. One thing, the difference between a business, there's only 3% of the country is business owners. You know that? Everybody wants to be one, but only 3% pull it off. The reason is those 3% have faith. See, in the business, I don't know who's going to be my client tomorrow. And how many of you have jobs or had a job? All right. You knew what day you was getting paid, didn't you? You knew exactly what day you was getting paid. You knew what day the check was coming. A business owner does not know that. And that's the hardest part for most of society to deal with, is not knowing where your check. I can never get another client for the rest of my life. I don't know that I'm going to get a client tomorrow. I have no idea. There's no pre-list of clients that come in and say this. All I can do is go out, be the good attorney. Maybe one day somebody in this room will become one of my clients. But being a business owner means that you do not know if it's going to work. He doesn't know if he's going to get one athlete to sign up for his business. If everybody knew who their clients would be when they started a business, everybody would do it. Part of starting a business is having that confidence, that faith, putting things around you to give you the confidence that it's going to work out, and then having faith that it will. And once he starts putting himself out there, letting people know, hey, this is KD Productions, this is what I do. I take business cards to the beach. Okay, that's how serious I am about letting people know that I'm an attorney, because you never know where your next client is going to come from, and it's out of my hands. But I have a mortgage to pay, I have car notes to pay, I have an office to pay, I have employees to pay, I have internet to pay, I have phone bills to pay. I have probably about $20,000 a month in expenses to pay, but I don't know where my next client is coming from. All you can do is go out, work hard, do what you do, build up integrity in the profession. I have a good reputation in Atlanta. I've never lost a client. I have a lot of great clients, a lot of entertainers, athletes, business owners, you name them. I get invited to a lot of good events, but I still don't know if I'm going to get a client today or tomorrow. So that's one thing, if you ever want to start a business, you have to be prepared to do, is be prepared to not know. And it's okay, because people come in my business and they go, well, if I quit my job, how do I know it's going to work? I tell them, you don't know. Every person who's coming to my office to quit their job to start a business never regretted it. They might not have all been successful, but they never regretted it. They never regretted the chance to take their own destiny into their own hands. At the same time, if I wanted to leave right here and pull my daughters out of school and fly to Hawaii for a week, I can do that. That's another thing that business gives you. It gives you the flexibility of managing your own time. However, I've been nights when I've worked till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning trying to close a deal, because I don't have the regular 9 to 5 schedule either. Clients call me at 7 in the morning. And when I was doing a career job, they called me 3 in the morning. So another thing in business is you don't have a clock. I mean, the clock is just, it doesn't matter. And so that's actually encouraging to me. When I used to work, man, I used to stare at that clock like, man, when is it going to get 5 o'clock? And now that I own my own business, I never look at the clock, because when you work for something you love, it's not called work. It's just called doing it. And so talking to different businesses, hearing good news about them having a closing, they just sold their business, or they're about to bring in some money, or they just got a big contract, that's all the fun that I get out of it. I mean, it's nice to get paid, don't get me wrong. But the idea is that in business, you have a lot more flexibility to control your destiny, your time, and what you're doing. How hard you work is directly related to how much money you get into the bank account. If you do not work hard in a business, there's no government welfare, help me out, I'm going to get a grant program. I get that a lot, too. People say, can I start a business with a grant? No. Grants are for people who are in business already who ask the government to help them. They say, can I get a loan? No. If you can't walk into a bank right now and get a loan, just forming an LLC and getting the EIN number is not going to make it any better. Banks aren't idiots. They're going to look the same thing. They're like, it's the same person. You know, you need to, if you can't get a loan by yourself, don't think you're going to start your business with a loan or a grant. It's not going to happen. If you're going to start your business, you're going to start it with your own money, and you're going to start it with your friends and family money. Now, how do you convince your friends and family to put money into your business? You got to start there. No one likes to do that, right? And maybe it's because of this phrase, stay out of my business. But the truth of the matter is you start your business mostly with other people's money, okay? Your money and somebody who believes in you. So, but when you go to your family and you ask them for things, don't ask them for it because they're your family. That's a bad decision. If my sister came to me and said, hey, can I have $10,000 for my business? I go, for what? She's like, because I'm your sister. I'm like, whatever. That's not going to work. You got to sell your family the same way you're going to sell a Dave Walker or another investor. You got to go in, tell them, what do you do? Why am I good at it? How much money you need? And what do I get for it? Boom, Liz, I'm KD Productions. That's what I do. Why are you good at it? I've been doing it for 4 or 5 years. I did it for a few athletes. How much money you need? I need $20,000. What am I going to get? For every $10,000, you're going to get 5%. Boom. She gets that. She makes a decision. She knows it's a business decision. Your family will respect that about you. Your friends will respect that about you. And think about if somebody came at you, one of your friends or family members, with something that was organized and structured. You might not have the money, but what you might say, oh, I met this attorney at the school. Maybe he's interested. Or I met this person. So having structure in your business automatically increases your confidence to talk to other people about it. See, I'm a business attorney, and one thing I cannot do is have a full-time job and a part-time business attorney, because people don't buy into that. They go, hey, what do you do? I'm like, well, I work at McDonald's, but I do some legal on the side. No, nobody wants to hear that. They want to hear you're all invested in your business. So KD Productions, he needs to be 100% working there for me to invest in him. If he's like, well, I do KD Productions at night on the side, I'm like, well, I'll keep my money at night on the side too. When you go out there and ask people for money, you got to show them that you're all in. I took my, $1,000 CD that my grandma gave me. I put it into my business. I took this $500 that I made. I put it in my business. So when I go to my family and friends, you got to put yourself out there so that they know it's not going to fail because your integrity is on the line. So my friends and family knows that they can send anybody to Dave Walker because he's out there. He's out there. He's an attorney. He's not going back. He's not going to change his mind. He's not going to turn up and just do landscaping, because he's committed to that business, so I feel good about him. Same thing when you go to raise money for your business. You have to put yourself out there that I'm all in. I'm not halfway in. I'm not part-time in. There's no such thing as a part-time business mogul, okay? Every business mogul was full-time. You can't just do it part-time and get away with it. So if you're thinking about owning a business, and I know a lot of you will at some point, whether it's now or later as an employee, you'll be sitting there like, man, this job sucks. It really does. And I got to find something to do with my life. I got to find something else. I'm destined to do something. I remember that attorney mentioned about starting a business. I want to start me a ballerina class, or I want to start me a car washing business. And you just got to remember some of the things I said today. Know what you want to do. Know what's going to be good at it. Figure out how much money you need. And if you bring in investors, figure out what you're going to give up. And have a passion about it. Have some faith in it. And don't do things that you aren't trained to do. Don't become one of these business owners that says, all right, if you sit down and you start a KD Productions, you say, okay, I need a website, I need an LLC, I need a corporation, I need some accounting. Don't start to become the accountant, the attorney, the website person. You have to outsource it. See, I don't do any of that myself. Could I do accounting? Sure. Could I figure out how to build a website? Sure. Could I do my own video? Sure. I don't do that. I hire other people to do it. Why? Because I'm good at being the attorney. See, every hour that I spend at the attorney is where I can make the most of my money. So I hire everybody. I could probably do my own plumbing, hire a plumber. So I have of that $20,000, a lot of that is the people who are doing other things that I choose not to do. Could I learn it? Sure. But that's how I grew my business, is that now I can spend time being the attorney in front of people because I'm not spending half the day trying to fix my computer or trying to build my own website. That's what's called mom and pop. When you hear people say mom and pop are people who work in their business because they don't outsource it to other people. So they work at the store. They work and they do their own accounting and they do their own everything because they're trying to save money. But to be honest, if you're going to grow your business, that is not the way to grow a business. The way you grow a business is you say, okay, these are all the things I need. This is how much it's going to cost me. I'm going to go to Liz or someone else, and then I'm going to get them to give me money so I can pay for these things so I can focus in on selling the athletes. Because if he spends all day cutting up the reel, staying inside, doing all the paperwork, doing all the website, he can't sell to anybody. You just can't. I mean, you get one or two athletes, but if you can spend your whole day selling to athletes, this is what I can do for you, that's how you make money, and then you hire other people. All right? Maybe I'll come back another day and talk about, law school. That's a fun topic to talk about. You guys never experienced law school and what that's like, or college, or any other topic.